And I remember my division chief told me, look, if you really think you could do a better job, go put your money where your mouth is and give it a shot. And I thought, you know what, that's what I'll do. So I applied to a couple departments in LA. I got in and I became a cop. And I realized pretty much within the first year that 90% of what I thought was true was not true. And I was completely wrong about the vast majority of all my assumptions, which I believe is probably the case for the vast majority of the public. And I learned the hard way.
Brothers and sisters! Brothers and sisters! I don't know what this world is coming to!
You're listening to the Black and Blue Podcast, a discussion and celebration of the roles of African Americans and other minorities in U.S. law enforcement. Your host on the Black and Blue Podcast is Dale Peters, a law enforcement professional with over 20 years experience in the business. Hop on board this Black and Blue train of interviews, current events, and pop culture conversations. So get ready. The Black and Blue Podcast is coming at you right now. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the greatest podcast of all time. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but welcome to the Black and Blue Podcast, where we celebrate diversity in U.S. law enforcement. If you don't know me, let me introduce myself. My name is Dale, and I'm the host. Thank you for tuning in to the show. And if you know me already, welcome back. I appreciate your support. You guys can continue to support the show by heading over to the Black and Blue Podcast YouTube channel and smashing those like, subscribe, and bell icons. And if you're listening to my soothing voice on your favorite podcast platform right now, make sure you rate the Black and Blue Podcast 5 stars. And don't forget to check me out on all my social media pages. You can find me everywhere at Black and Blue US. All right, so with that said, let me introduce today's guest. He is a former law enforcement officer who, after several years of service, left the profession to start up his own tech company. Black and Blue fam, let's give a warm welcome to SPIDR Tech co-founder and CEO, Rahul Sidhu. How you doing, sir?
Good, man. The audience track is a nice touch. I wasn't expecting it.
No, they are really here. It's not a track. They are really here, man. They're in the back.
Yeah, well, there must be like 1,000 of them.
I got them all crammed up. You can kind of see a few of them back there on the wall. We got the
right.
Storm from the X-Men. We got the Green Lantern. We got the President
those
Obama. We got
expensive cameos, man.
Yeah, we got Eazy-E and Ice Cube. We got everybody back here. They all tuned in, waiting with bated breath to see what Mr. Sidhu has to say. So how you doing, sir?
I'm going to disappoint them for sure, man. It's hard for me to keep Ice Cube's attention. Like Obama's attention is going to be tough, dude.
Yeah. How you doing? Good to have you on the show. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. And you are, like I mentioned in the intro there, you are the co-founder and CEO of SPIDR Tech. Before we get into, all about you, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about SPIDR Tech and what it is real quick?
Yeah, so SPIDR Tech is the world's first automated customer service platform for public safety. And what that means is that the best way to think about it is when you buy something on Amazon or online, whenever you buy it, you pretty much automatically get a message via email or text that says, hey, this is what you bought. Click here to track your order. You're going to keep getting messages. Your item is shipped. Your item is delivered. If you're going to get a survey that says, fill out the survey. Let us know how you feel about the item. Let us know about the service that we provided. These are all done automatically. This has been going on for a long time in the private sector. This is what the consumers come to expect when they interact with Domino's or Amazon or Uber or whatever these circumstances are. Yep. So we built that type of system specifically for police departments originally, and now we're expanding into fire and courts that allows you to do the same thing. So in our 60 plus agencies and jurisdictions across the country, if you call 911 in any of those jurisdictions, when you hang up, you get a text that says, hey, thanks for calling 911. Here's your call for service number. Here's what to expect. Officer's on the way. There's a delay, whatever the circumstances. When an officer submits a report, hey, here's your report. Here's everything you need to give to your insurance company. You might get a message. A detective's been assigned, an arrest has been made. The case has been sent to the DA. And then you might even get messages from the DA. And throughout that process, you'll get surveys asking you, hey, how was your experience with the officer, the dispatcher, the detective, the DA, whatever the circumstances are. that feedback then goes back to the agency so they can better optimize their operations as well. And that's what we've built.
Wow. That sounds like a really cool platform. How'd you get involved with that?
Well, like you said, I mean, I was working for a short time as a police officer. Before, I started as a paramedic, became a police officer, and spent several years wearing different uniforms and trying to get a feel for what it's like to be in public service like that, boots on the ground. And at the same time, I was noticing around me that these other tech companies, like when you buy something, like I said, from Amazon, the level of customer service was so much higher. And it wasn't higher because there's somebody at Amazon or Uber or Domino's picking up the phone every time your pizza goes in the oven. It was higher because they made an investment into their tech infrastructure to automate some of these customer service responsibilities. So, I have a background in tech as well, a light background, fidgeting around with things and building little software apps. I mean, I wasn't a great coder by any means, but just enough to understand how something like that would work. And I decided to kind of marry my love for tech and public safety and give this a shot.
Wow, that's what's up, man. And yeah, you gave it a shot, and everything took off from there. When did you start SPIDR Tech with it says co-founder there, so with your co-founders there?
Yeah, so my co-founders Elon Kaisman and Kenaniah Cerny. Elon is also a former full-time police officer, now reserve officer, just like me, in the LA County area. And he and I went to the academy together, like 8 years ago. And we were trying to get a sense of, in the academy we were friends. We both came from kind of a business world, and we understood it. We were joking around when we were in the academy, saying, "Hey, one day we might quit and start a big company, and we don't have to get." I remember we were running and we were getting gunned down by staff, just dirt all over us, mud and blood, and we were just like, we got to do something else. So he jumped on the company when we started, and Kenaniah Cerny was actually the guy who taught me how to code back in the day. He was master programmer, teaching classes on how to code, and he jumped in at the same time. So three of us started the company officially in 2015, although 2014 was when we kind of we were thinking about the idea. It started as a research project back then.
Nice. So you got out after how many years did you work full time?
Honestly, I was there for just under 2. I transferred basically. I
got out real quick. Yeah, good for you.
Yeah,
good for
real
you.
quick. I spent more time, on the fire rescue EMS side before I was a police officer, and I've been a reserve officer now for years at that same agency that was full time. To keep, found a way to continue my ability to learn on the job. I didn't have a tremendous amount of experience. I knew just enough about policing to be able to start a company like this and continue learning about it. And then my experience went from doing it in the field, which I continue to do to a certain extent on the reserve side, to just flying from department to department over 100 different agencies in the United States to learn about policing in that way. And I learned a great deal that I probably wouldn't have learned in a police car. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity as well.
Wow. That's I love to hear those stories because a lot of people don't seem to think that law enforcement officers can do anything other than police.
Sure.
We'll talk about a lot of the issues that are facing policing today, but it's good to see that we do have brains, and some of us use it within the profession. Some of us get out and use it out on the outside, but you did both. You got out and you're still using it for law enforcement purposes. So I commend you on that. I
appreciate it, Dale. Thank you.
Yeah. So how'd you get the interest to get into law enforcement in the first place? You said you kind of had a business background. What brought you to law enforcement, though?
Well, like I said, I was working as a paramedic originally and crew chief out in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. And I had some experiences with law enforcement, that didn't go so well. For people, your audience members that are just listening and not looking, I'm a brown dude, right? So I'm Indian. Yeah. And I had some experiences that didn't go my way when I was on the East Coast. One day I was working on duty as a paramedic, driving an ambulance on our way to a call with my EMT in the rig as well. And we got pulled over by like a road raging off-duty cop. The guy, we were on our way to a call. This guy pulls over to the side of the shoulder of the freeway to look inside the ambulance to see who was driving, sees me, comes up behind me in an unmarked white SUV, flips on the red and blues, pulls me over to the side of the road. Again, I'm on duty in an ambulance, and walks up, no uniform, no badge, no gun, kind of short, stocky white dude, and flips an ID that I can see for like half a second and yells, "Pittsburgh police," and starts yelling at me, asking me if I'm a real paramedic and asking for my ID, and goes back to his car and runs me for warrants and for whatever reason, and calls to check to see if I'm a real paramedic for whatever reason. Then comes back, throws all the IDs at me and said I cut him off in traffic and he's coming at me with a warrant. And then I'm like, I was maybe 22 at the time. So I was terrified. I didn't know better. So I'm like, oh my God, I must have done something wrong. 23. I pick up the radio and I, tell my chief, hey, I'm coming back. Here's what happened. Chief goes, that's weird. Just come on back. So I come back. The guy calls my chief straight and goes, hey, this is what your paramedic did. And he said, he's just driving an ambulance. He's on his way to a call. I mean, he flipped a U-turn and turned his lights on. Like that's what happens, And so then he found out that person that pulled me over was the off-duty chief of police for Pittsburgh School Police. And school police in Pennsylvania, they don't have that type of jurisdiction. They can't just be off-duty pulling people over on the freeway. You know what I mean? They have to be within like 1,000 feet from a school or something like that. And we were far from that. So that guy ended up getting fired for it because I was the last straw road rage incident for him. But I had to testify against him in court. The city asked me, I said, hey, look, like what happened? And my chief was like, you got to go because this is, like, you don't want this to look bad. I was just a young kid. So I just did what I was told, and I just said, this is what happened. I tell them my series of events, but I'm sitting there in the audience and I remember they asked the chief, why did you pull over this ambulance? And he said, well, it was driving erratically. It had its lights on. It was using its sirens. And they said, that just sounds like an ambulance being an ambulance. So what is it about this particular ambulance that caused, concern for you? And the chief goes, and you can actually Google this and still find the articles probably. The chief goes, the FBI taught me how to racially profile. They told me to be on the lookout for ambulances that are car bombs. They're cloned and they're designed to look like ambulances.
Wow.
And he actually called it a Taliban war wagon were his words in court. And I was the only one who laughed because I'm like, I can't believe this guy just said this in court.
No.
And everyone else is just like looking at me like they're terrified. And I remember going, man, that put a bad taste in my mouth. And I had one or two other incidents that weren't, I don't think racially motivated, but just made me feel like, man, these cops aren't doing a good job. And I remember my division chief told me, look, if you really think you could do a better job, go put your money where your mouth is and give it a shot. And I thought, you know what, that's what I'll do. So I applied to a couple of departments in LA. I got in and I became a cop. And I realized pretty much within the first year that 90% of what I thought was true was not true. And I was completely wrong about the vast majority of all my assumptions, which I believe is probably the case for the vast majority of the public. And I learned the hard way. And I also learned I loved the profession of law enforcement. I love the job of police officer. And it was something I felt, could use my help maybe in a different way. So that's what I did. I left and, like I said, I'm still a cop on the reserve side, but I wanted to find a way to contribute, through tech. And tech, like I said, is something I've been involved in for quite some time. I kind of helped build a little video game when I was 14. I had a little mini tech startup in digital currency before Bitcoin when I was in, high school that paid my way through college. And I did these little things, worked on an app when I was in EMS that allowed paramedics to send EKGs from the field to directly to the hospital. This is 2010. So way back before there were apps for something like this. And
that's awesome.
And I had little forays and that's how I got there.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because I remember the old show Emergency. It's probably before your time, unless, maybe paramedics, you guys watched that. Yeah, but I remember when they used to show the scenes out in the field when they had to do the EKGs and they send it by phone. I guess they were talking to the nurses and the doctor by phone, and then the nurse would tell them, push the IV or do this and do that, and they would send the EKG. I was like, wow,
that by the way, when I was still working as a paramedic, that was exactly still the same. Nothing had changed in decades.
Wow, still sending the paper. It would print out over the phone line, huh? That's crazy, crazy. And what's different now? Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't keep up with as much as I used to, but now, I mean, for the vast majority of of this stuff is digitally transferred to the hospital. So the
Right.
the doctors, the ER physicians or the medical directors or whoever's functioning in that capacity at the local ER is able to kind of see what the EKG results are, a lot of the vitals, without the paramedics having to necessarily try and explain it over the phone, which gives those doctors more confidence to be able to tell the paramedics like, hey, push this, etc. Or just, for example, with EKG, activate what's called the cath lab so that there doesn't have to be a triage in the ER. Instead, that patient who's suffering a heart attack can go directly to where they need that acute care, which was the main basis of what I was trying to do with the app, 12 years ago, 11 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still active. I work for a police department now, and when our firefighters arrive on the scene, they have to do care. Yeah, they don't communicate with the hospital at all. It seems like they're better trained to be able to do all that stuff, and then they just package them up and go to the hospital. Or I don't know what it is. That's their thing. We let fire be fire, and and police we police. But yeah, I love that you started on that side, and then you jumped over from the red side to the blue side, from the evil side, the evil empire, and then you came over to the light.
But you know what? You always hear the opposite, right? You always hear the cops that are like, you know what? I'd rather just sit in a recliner, cook, work out, play Call of Duty with my buddies, watch old 90s action movies, and do that for 24-hour shifts and have 5 days off. I mean, that's every cop's fantasy. They always end up, that's the way it goes. I'm like one of the only people I've ever met that's gone the other direction.
Yeah. I mean, we always joke. It's all in good fun. People apply. Be a firefighter. You can make mandatory overtime for just sitting and working out and cooking with your buddies and all that stuff you said. But no jealousy here. None at all.
No, it's true, man. That's pretty much what it was like. I got bored.
Yeah. So you're originally from the East Coast?
No, actually, I was born and raised in the LA area, and I went to Pittsburgh to try and gain some perspective, know what weather is like, what seasons feel like, give it a shot.
How did that work?
And then I quickly was like, nope, not for me, and I came back.
Not for you. How long did you stay out there?
Just about 4 years or so, maybe a little less than that, actually.
That was enough for you, huh?
That was enough. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just a couple winters, handful of winters in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You grow up in LA. You're like, okay, I appreciate this now. Thank you for your service. And you go right back to California. You don't need any more blizzards. You don't need the National Guard escorting you to 911 calls because that's to move the snow out of the way. I'm done with it. No more of that, please. Thank you. I don't need to be fighting the earth at the same time as I'm fighting everything else. Pass. Hard pass.
No doubt. Yeah. I'm originally from Columbus, Ohio, but I've been out here in Cali for, 20-something years now. So, I do not want to go back. I do not, just like you just said, dealing with the blizzards and tornadoes. We get tornadoes in Ohio.
Oh yeah, you got tornadoes too.
Yeah,
wow.
Get tornadoes too. You always hear the opposite side of that, from people on the East Coast talking about California. But earthquakes, you guys got to deal with earthquakes. We get earthquakes like once every 20 years.
I know. Yeah. And we're doing such a good job, like making things earthquake proof at this point.
Yeah.
That like when you get it, you're like, oh, that was cool. Like you know what I mean? Like a bad one's gonna be a bad one. We're due for a bad one, but it doesn't happen nearly as often as like the hurricanes and the tornadoes and the blizzards and the floods and all that stuff. I'll deal with hurricanes
every single year on the East Coast. Yep.
And you move far enough away from anything that can set yourself on fire, and you're good. You're golden. You don't really have to worry about it. Live in a one-story building. You know what I mean? With desks all over the place, you're safe.
That's the one thing we do have out here is the fires. Yeah.
That's the thing that's getting worse.
Yeah. I mean, that's global warming and all sorts of things and people not clearing the brush from the hills. And
that's right.
And it's getting hotter every year. It's crazy. So hopefully we won't need you to pull back into your fire services. Fire experience, your EMT experience.
I don't have the knees anymore, bro. I can't be walking up, 10 flights of stairs and this stuff anymore. I don't want to do that.
Right. So you mentioned earlier that you were Indian, but you grew up out here in Southern California. What'd your parents think about you joining law enforcement from the EMT career?
They hated it. They were not pleased. I can tell you, your Indian listeners, or even your Asian listeners, will tell you, parents, Asian and Indian parents are they're very specific with how they want their children to succeed. They have a very specific picture in their head. My parents wanted me to be a doctor, which is just like the absolute stereotype for Indians. and I was studying emergency medicine at the University of Pittsburgh. And so they saw, they were like begrudgingly accepting my whole like EMS rescue stuff because like, all right, that's one way for him to eventually become a doctor. And the day I told him I don't want to be a doctor, I'm going to go be a cop in LA, they didn't talk to me for like 4 months. It was a long time that they're just like, nope, we're super upset. And then halfway into the academy, when it felt real to them, my mom started sending me home cooked meals. She was like, okay, never mind. Like she started sending stuff like, okay, he's going to do it. So we may as well support him.
Well, moms are always like that.
Yeah, exactly. Eventually, yeah. My mom was like that when I bought a motorcycle. She was like, I hate this. I can't believe you're buying a motorcycle. Now stand right next to this motorcycle. Let me take a picture so I can show it to all my friends. You look very handsome. That's the way, you know what I mean? That's how moms are. Yeah. But they weren't happy about it. Now I have, my family comes from public service. My, grandfather was in the military. My cousin was in the U.S. Army and unfortunately was, killed in action as well. And so my parents don't have, they're very afraid of any form of public service that's considered downrange in some capacity. And I get it, so they're afraid of that. But now they're totally cool about it, and when I was starting the company, they're like, no, we don't really like this. It's too risky of a venture. So they've never liked any of the decisions, but they've worked out. Now they're happy. Now they're proud of me. Yeah.
They wanted to save bet for their baby. They wanted, medical, even though, for the medical profession as well. My son he's in college right now. He's a sophomore and he wants to pursue the medical profession. So that's not the end all be all as well as being safe. You hear about the horror stories with all the loans they got to pay back, and they're not on their feet until 15 years in, 12, 15 years in. So, yeah.
I mean, look, most doctors, you're going to be in your 30s before you're living the lifestyle, that you always wanted. And that's assuming, you graduate college at 22, you go straight to med school at 26, you do like 4 years residency, you're going to be paying stuff back for a while. You get to your 40s, you're like, all right, now I'm starting to really accrue some capital. I can buy that big house I wanted, but it takes a long time. And I thought about that. And by the way, no offense to doctors, God bless them. We absolutely need
doctors. I love doctors.
Yeah. But I was like, I got to find a way to live. I want that big house in my 30s, not my 40s. You know what I mean? Like, and I'll take a riskier route to see if I can make that happen. So it just wasn't something I wanted to do at the end.
Yeah. Secret, but just between me and you. If whenever I'm out on patrol and I pull over a doctor and I see that they're a doctor, that's one group that gets a break.
Yeah. I guess you know what I'll say. I absolutely, especially if they're like an ER doctor, an ICU doctor,
especially ER doctors. They may see me on their table one day. Yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely getting a break, man. And I always like try to recruit them for the reserves too. Like if I meet like an ER doctor, I'm like, hey, you're giving an interest in doing something like this, and sometimes I'm like so excited that's even a possibility. But that fades depending on the doctor. And like your plastic surgeon, I'm starting to go, okay, what kind of plastic surgery? I got to decide, if that's worth going 90 to 45. But really ends up depending at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's interesting you're talking about doctors and reserve. My dentist works as a reserve for the sheriff's department over here in San Bernardino County, and he actually does their identification for their corpses, the body, dental records and all that too. And every time I go in, so he knows, I'm a cop, and he, all trying to talk business, cop work when his hands are all in my mouth, and I'm like, and and he's the only one really doing the talking, but it's cool, because he's obviously pro law enforcement because he's a reserve. So
yeah. Well, one of the local doctors in our area is one of the ER doctors is also on the SWAT team for a local department as a reserve. So, people find their way, that you've got pilots that'll be reserves and they're air support for the agencies. You got, reserves that are on the legal side that help out, tech side that help out with that. Really, I think the reserve programs are fantastic. I think they're great ways to basically supplement your police force with special skill sets and essentially in most cases free labor. It's hard to turn that down if they have the adequate training and they're safe and people enjoy working with them. It's a no-brainer. It doesn't always go that way, but when it does, it's a great asset.
Yeah, let me ask you. So now that you are actually a reserve now, and speaking to a couple chiefs of police back east and down south, a lot of them are downsizing the reserves because, all the issues they've been having with policing,
Mhm.
and it's kind of hard getting, officers, let alone reserves. But they're also talking
Mhm.
about training, keeping up training for reserves. They have to keep up on the same level of training that the regular full-time officers have to do. And
Yeah.
sometimes, if a reserve is a busy person, they don't have time to keep up on that, and then they
Yeah.
come to work and then they get caught up in something and their training records weren't up to par. So, a lot of those
That's a
agencies are
liability.
just disbanding their reserve corps. What do you think about that? Are you doing a lot of training yourself? Doing all the stuff like that, on your off time?
Yeah, so I mean, like, I think, well, to answer that last question, that's on and off for me. So I like, because of the company, I'll have times where I'm spending a lot of hours doing the reserve thing, and I'm in the field. Like I'll when in 2020, early 2020, like 2019, I was doing a lot of patrol work. So I was keeping up with that stuff. All the training I would do on the offside was like, as it pertained to use of force and things that I thought would keep my
Yep.
patrol skills sharp. Then I transitioned from that to air support, and focused on helping our agency set up like a semi-autonomous drone program where you might have heard about these types of programs. We were the second one in the country to do this, where we were automatically or semi-autonomously sending drones directly to 911 calls from the local hospital rooftop to act as like helicopter air support and broadcast that image to all the officers. Chula Vista started that agency, and I went figure that out, and with the team and at our agency we started a similar program. And so I did that for a while, and a lot of my training ended up being relevant to that specific thing. And then I'll always
Okay.
take
Yeah.
courses in investigations and things like that. But I wouldn't let myself, go back and spend more time in patrol until I felt like any of the perishable skills, I recapped on that. I went back into a little bit of field training and do those things because I owe it to my partners. I owe it to the community to make sure that I am as, in perfect shape, mentally, physically, emotionally, all those things that are required to be in the field. But because I haven't done patrol for a little while, it's something to be perfectly honest with you, I haven't spent a lot of time doing. A lot of the training I enjoy doing is force training. It's like
Yeah.
jujitsu and it's shooting. I mean, those are two things that I would do even if I wasn't
Yeah.
a cop.
Yeah.
So that helps.
All right. All right. So now that you were working with SPIDR Tech, how's the business with that? I know you said it was a little busy with you. So how's that working out for you now?
It's good, man. I mean, look, it's like any business, scaling a company to go from like, yeah, we work with a couple agencies to 60 agencies to then, going from more than that. It has its unique challenges. And any startup, when you go from 5 employees to 50, like you have challenges with the workforce there too. So it's a lot of stuff that I'm trying to make sure that I'm learning, or at least hiring people who know better than me, and that's, I think, my most important job as CEO president of the company is to ensure that I'm surrounded by people who are smarter, more capable than me. We were actually acquired by Versaterm Public Safety, which is a great company, 3 months ago, and we are part of this larger initiative to help public safety agencies have modern frameworks for their technology, whether that's customer service and community engagement, which is our side of the fence, or incident control, incident command, which is something that's also very important to public safety agencies nowadays, especially with things like active shooters and protest riots and wildfires and things like that.
Yes. Yes.
All the way down to certain aspects of like the next generation of forensic technology. It all comes down to being able to do more with less in modern
Right.
policing. And technology helps fill that gap. So now I'm part of a larger, the company's part of a larger strategy, and I'm focused on doing that. And I still travel quite a bit, going to conferences, speaking, and most importantly, meeting with agencies and spending time with some of these other agencies. I mean, we have customers like Seattle Police and Madison, Albuquerque, San Antonio Police
Wow.
Department, like all over the country. We're in Canada now, and all, smaller agencies up and down, 20 plus agencies in California, University of California, places like this. And so everybody does things differently. And it's I take it upon myself to ensure that I understand how the dynamics shift from agency to agency to ensure that the company itself is being able to provide that level of value to these unique instances.
Right. Right. And when you first started out, How was that pitch? How were you able to go
Rough.
in and yeah, because law enforcement is a little uh, pessimistic for one, and not one for change. We like things the way they are unless we can see it really in front of us that this can benefit us in this way or that way. How did
Yeah.
that first year or so work out for you?
Yeah, man, I mean, it was going from 0 to 1 is a difficult thing to do. That whole something from nothing type mentality is difficult. And you got to play, like, there's two things you got to do. Like, there's number one, you kind of got to fake it till you make it. I'm a big proponent of that. And number two, when you're dealing with a chicken and egg, you got to force one of those things to happen. And that means you have to give just a little bit of each on both sides. And what I mean by that is, when we were starting the business, we didn't have customers because we didn't have money to invest in the product. We didn't have money to invest in the product because we didn't have customers. And so solving that problem meant, like, I had to fly out to Tucson, Arizona, where someone knew the assistant chief, and I sat down and pitched. I had like screenshots of a product that didn't exist yet. I sat down and I pitched Tucson PD. I said, hey, here are these things. If we built this, would you maybe even use it for free? And they're like, yeah, okay. We would consider using it for free. And then I did that with a couple agencies. And then I'd go to investors and say, hey, I've got these customers that are lined up to ready to use this. I've got these letters of intent, which legally meant nothing, but it was just enough that they're like, hey, these people are signing up to be my friends. That's basically all this thing says. And the investor's like, that's good enough. I'll give you a little bit of money. And then I would make just enough of the platform to go to these agencies and say, hey, this is a real thing. Like, let's sign a contract now. And they go, okay. And they'll sign the contract, but it's for $0. And then I'll deploy it and show that it worked. And then I'll go back to the investor and say, it works now. I need even more money. And I remember first I raised like $100,000. And then I went back and said, I have something that kind of works, barely. And I raised like $1 million. And then with the Winklevoss twins and a couple other folks, if you're familiar, that gave us money that early because they just thought it was an interesting story. And then we actually built it and deployed it and actually got our first paying customers. One of them being my old department, and which you got to do. You got to leverage your network, in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we had 4 deployed agencies, and with 4 agencies, I went back and I raised $2.5 million. With Google being one, Alphabet being one of the investors, and a couple other folks, and that's when we were like, all right, let's put. With 2.5, we ended up deploying to over 20 agencies, and I pulled in a little bit more capital, and then we got to 60, and then we were acquired, and that it's a step-by-step process. But in the beginning, we had to fake it till we made it, and we had to have just enough chicken to get the egg, and just enough egg to get the chicken, and just keep playing it that way.
Wow. I love hearing this because this isn't typically what we hear on the Black and Blue podcast. But basically, it's the same thing that when I first started out this podcast about 1.5 years ago, I had to, like you said, leverage your network. I had to first interview people that I knew, because people that I didn't know, chiefs of police, back east, or even back over here in California, did know me. They had never heard of me. They didn't know if I was trying to do some gotcha type of podcast or what have you. So I had to, show them that I, the sort of showed the format that I had, so that they could actually see that and vet me. And then, slowly but surely, that's when, more and more guests started to come on the show. I'm not raising the capital from Google and Alphabet yet, but, I'm getting there. You're the first step.
Hey, man, it's step by step,
Yeah. It takes a while. I mean, it probably took a while for you to get your first profit on there. How long would you say before you started seeing some profit gains there?
It was,
or are you still not seeing them?
No, we became profitable 5 years in. It took a long time to become profitable. So we were relying on outside funding for a while to pay for expenses. And then when we became profitable, we raised more money because we're like, all right, we know this works. Profitability at that stage, when you look at it, you go, okay, I can inject another 5 million or something into the business and take this thing from, a couple million in revenue a year to 10+ million in revenue a year. But to do that, I need to inject the company with capital. That's the thing with venture capital businesses, is that they're not incentivized like traditional businesses where you just go to profitability and you grow organically and responsibly. They're designed so that you can grow as quickly as you possibly can. And then at some point down the line, when you're like a big public company and you can buy your stocks publicly, that's when you start shifting towards maybe a profit-based business with strong fundamentals. But that's just a totally different game.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And same thing, with the podcast game, I'm hearing, People don't start really making money 3 to 5 years in. So, you know, if
Mhm.
you're, but it's different for you when you're starting a business, because one, you always hear the horror stories that, you know, what 50% of businesses, I'm sure the stats are even higher than that, you know, fail. But you
Yeah.
still, if it's something that you believe in, that's what you put your heart and soul into, then you'll do it.
Yeah, it's like less than 1% of businesses end up getting acquired, you know, and so to be in that 1%, you know, we're very grateful. And I'm also particularly grateful for the first agency to ever really, you know, first agencies to ever give us a chance was Tucson PD and Grover Beach PD. And the first ones to ever give us money was Redondo Beach PD and Monterey Park PD. And the first investors to ever give us money was Techstars, this guy named Alex Isgold and KJ Singh. These two guys gave us money the first time. So all the people that really believed in us when believing in us didn't make any sense really,
Yeah.
those are the people that I'm always going to remember for the rest of my life because they catalyzed a totally different life for me and all the people that work with us.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So how'd you guys even come up with this idea? You said you had a little bit of tech knowledge, a little bit of programming knowledge from college or what have you. What kind of spurred this idea and getting the technology together to actually to make? First of all, is it an app or is it a computer software? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a web app in the sense that you don't have to download anything. It's not installed on anyone's computer. It's an app like
Okay.
Facebook. If you go online, is an app when you're on the website.
Yeah.
You know, um, but it's integrated with the records management and dispatch systems at every agency. So it's got this data flow that goes back and forth. Originally, when the company started, our main focus is trying to get a sense of what data is available to help. Like how can we leverage technology to use data that's available in public safety to essentially do more than just catch bad guys? Because every company that you were, in the public safety space was keeping cops safe and catching bad guys, which is great. You need those two things. But that left this large hole in what I would consider to be just other aspects of service to the community, which I also saw that, my co-founders and I saw was the direction public safety was headed 7 or 8 years ago. It was just after the Ferguson incident, and people started to view policing a little bit differently, and we saw that that's probably not going to slow down. So our main focus was how do we do that? And I remember, we had a product, but we were running out of money. The way we were originally looking at it is not the way I just pitched it to you with the customer service component. It was a little bit different. And I remember there's this guy, his name's Michael Sherling. He was the former chief of police in Burlington, Vermont. And he was one of our advisors, and he said, "Hey, why don't you fly out to Burlington, hang out, let's talk this through." And we were running out of money, so we had to come up with some ideas fast. So we went to Burlington, my co-founder and I, and we sat on his boat in Burlington, and we sat there with the fire chief as well, I believe, and we were just having beers, and he said, "Look, you got to stop trying to do all this stuff and just do one thing really well, and ideally make that thing something that's relevant to customer service or public perception, because that's what people want to spend money on and time on right now." And we thought, okay. And he's like, "Why don't you just think about how Amazon does customer service, and like, what's that one thing they do? Like, they send a receipt. So when someone calls 911, why don't you just shoot a text message receipt to the 911 caller and just do that one thing and do that well?" We're like, "Wow, that's a great idea." And we went back and we spun off. We did a lot of the research and we spun off, into that direction. How do we become the customer service infrastructure for these agencies? And it just kind of grew from there.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. I love it. I love hearing these stories. Make me want to sit down and make up some sort of plan where I can. I'm pretty tech savvy too.
There you go.
Yeah,
There you
let me
go.
figure something out. Yeah, yeah. In my off time, ever since high school, I'm a DJ, so I do DJing, events and stuff like that. So I always got some technical stuff. How I kind of do the show as well. So I might come up with something and
Okay.
yeah, I love
You
I
got to
love
let me
hearing
know.
these
Let's do
stories.
it.
I love hearing these stories. Definitely, definitely. So, what's the family feel about you now that you're this big time tech guru?
They're happy, man. They're just, yeah, it's like any good parents. They feel like, okay, you kind of, you're good enough now. You made enough that they don't have to really
Yeah,
worry as much anymore. It's like there's like a torch passing now, and I feel like I'm taking care of them more, and that's how it should be. So They're happy, man. And at this stage, they're not asking me what I'm going to do. They're not worried about like the decisions I'm making on a day-to-day basis. You know, it took 30 something years, but now they're confident that I'll be okay. And that's important for me.
Good for you. Are they in California? Where are they?
Yeah. There's I'm obviously I'm hitting you up from Arizona. We were talking about that earlier, in the Phoenix area, but yeah, they're still in the LA area.
All right. How do you like Phoenix?
You know what, man? I got to be honest. Like I'm in Scottsdale actually, and I love it. It's great. Coming from LA to Scottsdale, Scottsdale is like a kind of like a resort vibe community. You can kind of see the city lights in the background right now. Mm-hmm. It is one of the cleanest places in America that I've been to, and like I said, I've traveled 100 different places. It's been a lot of places, and Scottsdale super clean, super nice. Everything's very new. No one's really bothering anybody here. Everyone's just, calm and collected and going about their business. And everyone, like, it's just, you're never going to see people like really yelling at each other. It feels like it's hard to imagine someone road raging in Scottsdale. And it's just a total utter difference from LA. Now, what I will say is it's way hotter, 4 or 5 months of the year. So you got to earn your cool factor. And it doesn't have the food that LA might have, but pretty much everything else, man, it's great.
Yeah. What spurred the move to Arizona? I'm sure taxes for one.
Hey, I will neither confirm nor deny the taxes piece, but what I will say is, the acquiring company is actually headquartered in Scottsdale, so or in the Phoenix area, and that I wanted to make sure I was close to where the bread gets made, and that was a big part of it.
Yeah, no doubt. So, wow. Well, I love hearing these stories again. I love hearing that, you've taken your knowledge and you've also taken your interest and you kind of molded them into one to kind of still do what you like to do on the reserve, but also service the law enforcement community as well. I love hearing that. And I love hearing that you're growing and that you guys are doing something that you guys love to do and it's working out for you. I love to hear that.
Thanks, Dale. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, so before I let you go, Rahul here, like I told you before, I like to play a little game or a little trivia with my guests here. We're gonna call this here. Check this out. This is.
Last night I saw a superhero. He was black. He said, "This is for the street. Black Lightning's back."
All right, we'll call this my Black Lightning round. Black Lightning round, not just a lightning round. Black Lightning round. I don't know if you see him over here. There's I can't even get there. There he is, right there. There's Black Lightning right there.
There he is.
So, all right. Right. Anyway, so I'm just gonna fire some quick questions at you. You fire back with some quick answers, and we'll get some more insight on Rahul Sidhu. So, real quick, Apple or Android?
Apple.
You're an Apple guy, huh?
No, I mean, you know what, man? If someone sends
Android
me a text
right
and it's,
Android
I'm sorry, but and I know this because I was texting you earlier. Send me green text.
Yes.
It's hurting my soul, man. It hurts my soul. The green text.
Yeah. Hey, I used to be an Apple fanboy, but then I jumped off of that train.
Yeah. Hey, look, Android phones are definitely better. Don't get me wrong. I'm just sucked into the Apple cult. I'm self-aware. I'm totally self-aware, but that green text thing is just, I'm like a single issue voter when it comes to these phones, bro.
Yeah,
it's the green text is too much for me.
Right. You're still in the law enforcement realm, in this law enforcement space as a reserve, but what do you miss the most about full-time police work?
What do I miss the most about full-time police work?
Come on, think. There's got to be something. One thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like being a reserve is kind of like the best of both worlds. So it's hard to be like, what I miss is just being forced to work overnights, and I miss the mandatory overtime. I miss working with the people that I didn't want to work with and not having the ability to go to other shifts.
You're killing me, brother.
What? I will say this. Look, the easy thing for me to say is I miss getting paid while I was there, right? Getting paid for the time. It's hard to say I don't miss the Skrilla, but I definitely don't miss the other stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. Your favorite musician or music group?
Favorite musician or music group? Okay, that's good. Because there's so many, man. You're gonna have to break it down by genre almost.
Are you an eclectic dude or what?
I mean, like I'm mostly, I'd say I'm mostly into hip hop, but like I go through my phases. You know what I mean? Like it's like hip hop baseline, but I definitely go through my phases. And I would say
drop somebody from hip hop for me.
Right. Okay. What I've been listening to like a lot on the classic side is DMC, man. Like I can't like miss with the classics, and like the new stuff just doesn't have like that minimalist beat with just the clever lyricism.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, and when I do want that, I end up finding it elsewhere. But damn, it's hard to beat the classics.
No doubt. How's your marksmanship right now?
Serviceable, you know, like I'm sure it's like 90% what it is usually, but I still shoot for fun. And, you know, like I was shooting way before the academy. So, I mean, I enjoy it, but I don't want to say that I'm like top shot or anything.
Yeah. Cool. So you're a world renowned traveler. What place would you like to visit that you haven't, just yet?
I haven't just yet, man. There's a lot of Europe I want to go to that I haven't just yet. I'll tell you my favorite country. I'm a big food-based traveler, so I want to go where the food is. And Japan and Italy are two countries I've been to, and I ate my way across like both countries. So I'm just thinking about where's the food. Like there's so many parts of Europe where the food's good, but South America the food's good. So I gotta say Europe. I just gotta say Europe overall.
Okay. So you like big dogs or small dogs?
Big. Medium at the smallest, you know, but I'm big on medium big. I want to be able to like wrestle a dog, you know. I don't want to like it's so small that like I'm afraid
you got a particular breed you like?
It's gonna end. What's that?
Particular breed you like?
I mean, I don't want to be like a stereotypical cop and be like I like anything that ends with shepherd, so I'm not gonna do that.
Or rot or
yeah, exactly. You know, like I like big goofy dogs, man. You know, and I know this is like gonna totally kill my man points, but like those big goofy doodle dogs always crack me up with their faces. They're big enough, you know, and they're playful. But I'm trying to avoid the stereotype.
Okay. So other than SPIDR Tech, what's been the biggest technological advancement for law enforcement, in your opinion?
Of all time?
Of all time.
I'm just gonna list off a couple real big ones real quick.
Okay.
Dispatch software, where you put the computers in the cars and people can, you know, the officers see what's happening. That's a big one. Shout out to Rick Smith at Axon, because Taser creating, you know, electric weapons like that. That's another big one. GPS, I think, as it's generated, is a big one. Not only because it helps with callers, it helps with cars. And, you know, unfortunately, there are agencies out there where they can't find officers, etc., and GPS, you know, really solves for that. The invention of the radio, that's got to be huge. You know, remember back in the day, like you'd have to run more than you need
than your gun. You need that
it's the most powerful thing you got, man. You can't outrun the radio, right? So I'd have to say those are a top 4 for sure.
Got it. Gotcha. Have you ever bought anything from one of those 1-800 TV ads? You know, with those fast talking announcers.
TV ads, man. 2021, you got to change this question to have you bought something for the ads on 1-800, and have you bought something from Instagram ads or Facebook ads? Because I sure as hell have bought plenty of these random gimmicky things from Instagram.
Hey, I'm looking at some shirts that I saw on, you know, pop up on my IG feed the other day. So I'm you know, I'm not sure if I'm gonna hit the click, you know, the buy button on that, because I'm thinking, you know, is it just gonna jack my money, or am I really gonna get the shirt? Yeah.
Nah, I think more often than not, you're going to get it. I have bought stuff on like, I'll see like it on Instagram, and I'll buy it and I'll like forget about it. And 3 months later, it'll show up from a Chinese address. And I'm like, well, that's why I shouldn't do this. And it shows up, but it takes its sweet ass time.
Yep. So now you're in Scottsdale in the Phoenix area, and you said the food's not as good as LA food, but if I'm flying into Scottsdale, the Phoenix area, recommend a restaurant for me.
All right, look, highest end experience you could probably get in the Phoenix area is a restaurant called Binkley's, and you're going to pay for it. And Binkley's is like, it's a unique experience. They only serve dinner to 20 people a night, and they all have to show up at exactly the same time, 6:30. And there's no menu, and you just eat what the chef makes for you. And it's like a 12-course crazy meal with wine and stuff like that. And every course isn't just like one bite. It's like 5 things. Like they'll have a corn course where they go, here's cornbread, here's corn soup, here's street corn, here's corn on the cob, and you're just like, oh my God. And then there's another course. And if you can survive 12 courses and walk out of there and fit through the doorway, then God bless you. But I'll tell you, I did one of those when I got here because people kept telling me about it, and it was amazing.
All right, I'll have to check that out next time I'm in Phoenix. And last but certainly not least, name a person in history that you would put on Mount Rushmore.
Person in history. I'm thinking it's got to be a president.
It doesn't have to be.
Okay,
Whoever
if it doesn't have
Rahul
to be a
wants
president.
to put on Mount Rushmore. It could be DMX if you want, whoever you want.
I was saying Run DMC. I'm not talking about DMX.
DMC from Run DMC. Yes, okay. Oh, you classic. You talking 80s
classic. I'm not
okay.
talking about DMX. Calling DMX. I mean, no offense, DMX, but you're not classic like that classic. All right, there's a difference.
Okay, yeah. I love both of them, but go ahead. Who's going on Mount Rushmore?
That's tough. I mean, I think about like the people who have changed so much in America or changed America so much. You gotta think about people from the civil rights movement. You got to think about that and how much that's changed life in America for people like you and me. And if that's who I'm thinking about, the obvious ones come to mind, like Martin Luther King's one, but I kind of push. I always think about who's that first person that took the stand before anyone else did. And so the idea of Rosa Parks is pretty important to me because that was just one person doing one thing that could have ended her life. And I think that it just makes me think like that's got to be it.
That's it right there. Wow. Very insightful. I love that. All right, man. I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on and letting us know all about you and SPIDR Tech. And where can we find SPIDR Tech? You guys have a website? You guys have social media?
Yeah, website's www.spidr and spelled without the E, so SPIDR tech.com. And you can find me on Twitter. It's at RAHOOLSIDOO. So it's like Rahul Sidhu spelled phonetically.
All right. Rahul Sidhu. Got it. All right, man. I appreciate you coming on and you be safe out there. It's starting to cool down a little bit, so you won't be burning everything off over there in the Phoenix area. But when it comes back around to being summer again, I don't know what to
I'm
tell
ducking
you.
out, man. I'm going to Denver or
120.
something. Yeah,
You don't want to go to Denver
now.
now.
Somewhere else.
Yeah, you don't want to go to Denver now. It's going to start snowing here in a little while. Yeah. All right, brother. I appreciate you, and you be safe, and I wish you lots of luck in your growth in SPIDR Tech, and hey, I'll put in a good word over in my agency, and we could use some of the, like I said, all agencies could use some infusion of technology, and we could definitely use it as well. Yeah, definitely. In my
Sounds good, man.
All right,
I appreciate it, man.
You got it, man.
Thanks
Be safe.
for having me on.
Be safe.
You too.
Talk to you. All right, Black and Blue Techies, that's it for this episode of the Black and Blue Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode with SPIDR Tech co-founder and CEO Rahul Sidhu. Thank you for coming on to the show, sir, and I wish you much success in all your endeavors. Like I said at the beginning of the show, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you smash those like, subscribe, and bell icons on YouTube, or rate it 5 stars on whatever podcast platform you're listening to the show right now. Come on back to the Black and Blue Podcast in 2 weeks, where I'll chat with another interesting personality. But until then, y'all know the phrase, stay black and blue. I'll holler at you. Deuces.
This has been a Maitre D Entertainment presentation.